Welcome to the C Word, the Conservators podcast. Today we're talking about working from home. I'm Jenny Mathiasson, an objects conservator based in South Yorkshire.
And I'm Kloe Rumsey, an objects conservator based in Greater Manchester.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hello, season 7.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's weird.
It's so nice. I have to say, I didn't think that season 7 we'd be apart.
No, there is that. I just thought this would be business as usual, but in actual fact, we're in wildly different locations. And it's a bit weird because it just means that I'm staring at a phone with like a thumbnail of Chloe's face on it because we can't use video because that chews up too much bandwidth. So it's a bit of a strange time. But yeah, so it's kind of apt that then we have decided to do a working from home special.
Oh, it's really poetic. And I've got my setup here. So I'm in my partner's office and he works from home normally, which I'll talk about later, but it's in an attic space and there isn't even that much art on the walls, which is unusual for the rest of the house. So I've got a giant floor cushion stacked on the desk in front of me and like various blankets around to try and remove the echo, but there's only so much I can do. So
that's true, but it's a great effort and I'll share a picture of what it looks like. It's amazing. By the way, this is what we kind of ask guests to do anyway. If they can't join us in what's usually the studio, then we do ask them to kind of, adapt their space a bit like this. So it's just better sound quality that way and stuff like that. So yeah, it is one of those crazy fun things that you kind of like making a little den for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A huge thank you to everyone who has helped us transcribe our episodes. We're doing really well on that, and we're going to start.
Thank you.
Actually, at the point where this is released, we will have popped up a couple of these transcripts on our website. We have a new FAQ, and we've got like a resource list, and there's some new stuff on the website. That's thecword.show if anyone fancies having a look.
Jenny's been knocking it out the court, basically, is what you're saying.
Hey, thanks. But it's not just me, it's also the volunteers.
Okay, I meant website specific.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you, volunteers. You've all been amazing.
You absolutely have, and we're very, very grateful. You've been amazing. So that means that we can now be a little bit more accessible so that people who can't necessarily listen to the show can still enjoy the content. And yeah, it's been fantastic. So yeah, thanks so much for helping. That's been great. Yeah. That's probably all the podcast news, I think. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So this is our work from home special.
I have one piece of news that we've probably most of us actually heard of already, but it's kind of apt for this. It's not a lockdown special, what we're recording. Obviously, it's a work from home special, but the news at the moment is the pandemic. And this is one of the big heritage stories from this. So thieves have stolen the £5 million parsonage garden from the Singer Laren Museum. I'm probably pronouncing that wrongly. Sorry.
This is the Van Gogh, isn't it?
Yeah.
I saw that and I shared it with some of my colleagues. And first of all, the consensus was, oh, bummer. And then also, but it's not even a nice one. Which is harsh. It's just one of his more.
Not the point.
It's not really the point. It's not one of the. I wouldn't say it's one of the more famous ones, but it is certainly still one of his art pieces. So that's kind of a big deal. And yeah, I was on loan as well. So yeah, that sucks. But yeah, also I have seen people basically pleading on Twitter that please don't tell people about your security measures at this time. You may want to be a little bit careful.
It hadn't even occurred to me that, that's really naive of me. It hadn't occurred to me that bloody criminals would take this opportunity.
Yeah, heritage crime is a problem. And obviously right now there are just less people around, so, less risks.
Yeah,
so
true.
That's not a great thing, but there will always be people who take the piss in times of need.
Back off. We've got enough going on right now to have to worry about whether our things are safe. Thank you very much.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it? But yeah, that's a good point. That has been a heritage-related news story recently. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's the thing that jumped to mind.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, I think other than that, I think we'll just stay away from the news for a little bit.
Just stay away from that. Yeah, I'm just switching that off. Yeah.
How are we? I mean, we're both working from home. So, how are you settling into this, Chloe? How are you finding this?
Well, had we recorded this a week ago, my answer would be very different.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, I've just been put on furlough leave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is a very...
Can you explain what that means? I've heard it a lot, but I also don't understand it.
Not really. So it's essentially, I will get up a definition, because essentially what it is the government will pay the institution 80% of the worker's pay to make up for the fact that the worker can't raise money or do the normal job in the normal way that they do.
Okay, so it's job retention, kind of.
It's job retention, yeah. Okay. But I'm just going to get up a leave of absence, especially that granted to a member of the services or a missionary. Huh. That was the automatic. Thanks, Safari, for that. So it's temporary leave of employees due to the special needs of a company or employer, which may be due to economic conditions at the specific employer or the economy as a whole.
Tick.
I don't know if that makes... I mean, it's a sort of governmenty and economicsy type thing, so it's not in my area of expertise. All I know is that I'm not allowed to work, and this has happened, I've heard this, quite a few people now, particularly in Heritage, have been put on furlough leave because so much of what we do relies on the places that we're going to and the things that we're actually physically seeing. So it's good that there's government support for that, and this is obviously a very specific pandemic issue as well. Yeah. So this isn't a normal work from home situation.
No, that's true. That's true. It isn't.
But it is kind of, it's kind of confronting me with quite a bit of sort of self-discipline type issues, I think.
Okay.
More so than when I was working from home. So I will backtrack slightly. Over 2 weeks ago, my museum was told, shut, please. Everyone should go home. So it's been a bit weird for me, and I can't remember how much I said in the previous episode when we did, in the special episode, the coronavirus special.
We mostly didn't go into it because we wanted to save it for this episode.
Yeah, it was difficult for me because my main work at this point of time, obviously it comes and goes, doesn't it? With things that we do laptop or computer-based, things we do collections-based, things we do conservation-based. So it was irritating for me because my actual really important thing that I was working on was a deadline for, well, yesterday. It was this last gone Friday. It's Sunday today. So I had 3 weeks of my project left to go. I needed to finish it before the end of the financial year, and that's what I was working on. So it was for me very much, I've got to think of something to do at home because
Yeah, I can see that being a very, a kind of different thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And this has come up from listeners in particular, because I have been trying to put questions on social media and stuff about how people are doing and like just kind of checking in with people, like how's the conservation community doing? And I think number one, after childcare is a nightmare and homeschooling is not helping right now, is that the fact that the lack of access to the collections and the lack of hands-on work has been the big frustration. So yeah, fair enough, really.
Yeah, I think there is plenty of stuff to do, but it's... So first I'll go into what I have been doing. I've been turning a lot of hard copy, so analog, a lot of files of collections information, object information into a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. That's a project that I started a couple of years ago when we found that we were having problems because the way we've been recording one specific area of the collection has been to aid. It was started in the early 90s, essentially. So essentially before there was easy access to large databases and stuff. So that has been continued because it's a really practical, physical way of leafing through essentially a specific aspects of the collection that's used every year, used very, very regularly. So though that's very useful, we did find that it was becoming problematic at point of acquisition or point of, say, programming and object use, that people just weren't able to quickly search the collection. They'd look at the folder and go, oh, I like that object, by the photograph of it and the bit of object information. I'd like that, please. And we'd have to go, sorry, this one is not in the right, we cannot achieve this level of conservation in the time, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So what I've been doing is turning the information, the condition information and object information and history and stuff into a big spreadsheet. That's ongoing and it is something that I can be doing. But at the moment, I've been really sprinting through it and it wouldn't have lasted me had I not gone on furlough. It wouldn't have lasted me beyond a week, I don't think. I've done some video editing. There's some server tidying bits and pieces, that kind of thing.
Like digital housekeeping.
Digital housekeeping, yeah. There's some health and safety stuff. There's policy writing stuff. But as I'm not the manager of the studio that I work for, a lot of that stuff is the sort of role of the manager, and she was doing that already. She's now on furlough leave as well because she'd done most of that stuff anyway. So this was all fine, and I'm very impressed with how they turned it around. Essentially, how IT managed to turn it how to get everyone working from home, essentially, around from everyone working in an office. So we used Remote Viewer as an app. It's something that you download to your computer and it can access. And I think, though we were working away at the time, I think it's also something that's downloaded onto the computer you want to view. And then it's essentially a way for you to control your computer from a remote distance.
Okay, interesting.
Which is great, except on Mac it's really buggy, and I've got a Mac laptop and it was closing itself every 20 minutes or something. So that was a bit of a struggle, to be honest. But it doesn't matter now because I'm on furlough leave.
Oh, well, I mean, that sounds like it's kind of worked out then. So you're filling your days with other activities right now, basically.
Yeah, and I before when I was doing my actual job, I didn't find discipline quite so difficult because I was interested in the digitization projects that I was doing, and I knew I had a goal. I found it more easy to set my own goals, and I knew that I'd work the work hours, and then I'd go off and do some sewing in the evening and then some cooking, and it was like I really tried to keep. This is something we'll probably talk about. I really tried to keep the same kind of schedule as I had when I was commuting into the office, into the lab.
Yeah.
And that really worked for me. I did find the proximity of my sofa quite difficult. And I did have to move my workspace from the dining room to Tom's office because the radiator doesn't work in the dining room. And I found myself getting really cold. And then I might go and get myself under an electric blanket on the sofa. And then suddenly you're on the sofa. And though you're checking emails, you've got a bad back. And
yeah.
But as soon as I moved upstairs, I was totally fine.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it. I suppose for me, it's been... so I've only been doing this for a week at this point. And for me, that's been 4 days because I'm only part-time. I suppose at the time of actually releasing this episode, I will probably have a really different view on this. But at the point of recording, things that I've found challenging include online meetings. I really don't like online meetings. As it turns out, I hate group calls. It's a shambles at the best of times, and boy, people are trying. I'm not really enjoying it. Icon actually put out a nice little guidance document, I suppose, about how to get the most out of online meetings. That's quite good. I'll pop a link to that in the show notes. But yeah, it's depending on other people's internet connections and stuff, it can be kind of actually painful. And I'm not hugely a fan. I do appreciate that they are a way of keeping in touch with people, and actually that's really important, and I think it is important to kind of feel like you're still part of a team. I absolutely agree with that. But they are kind of the bane of my existence, especially when people are like, let's do a morning meeting. Oh, mornings. Which brings me to another thing of I'm not a big fan of sticking to the going into work routine, by which I mean...
Right.
I'm not a morning person at all. If I could change my entire life to be about 11 to 7 rather than 9 to 5, that would be ideal. And you'd think now would be the time to try that. However, that doesn't stop people from putting in 9 o'clock meetings. So actually I can't. And I think that's been a source of frustration for me at the moment. I've also not really set up a good home working environment yet because I was kind of trying it out in the kitchen because that's the most convenient place to convert to a place where I can work, because the kind of home office in the house belongs to my other half, Fox, because he does work from home all the time, so he does need that space. So it's been a case of, right, where can I set up? The living room is out because it's a very open space and it's not suitable for that, and also the sofa would actually kill my back.
Yeah.
So it's between the kitchen, where there is a kitchen table, and the craft room / spare bedroom / storage space, where there is also a table that I can use. But actually getting that to a state where I can use it, I haven't been able to muster the strength yet. So that's my project for tomorrow.
Fair enough.
That's my project for tomorrow, is just trying to tidy that up to a state where I can not be distracted by anything fun in the room and just get work done. That's going to be a challenge. That means putting everything into cupboards that I basically put a lock on. But so I've been trying being in the kitchen. The kitchen's kind of cold. I have absolutely no back support at all because we have one office chair and that one is in use. So I don't have a chair. I have various kinds of stools, but they are not great for back support. So the ergonomics of this entire ordeal is interesting. And I think this would be a very different situation if it was a case of, I'm going to set up a home office. I have time to get into this. But in actual fact, this was more of you're working from home now and nothing can be provided for you. So it's kind of it's a rockier challenge than I think it would be if I was like setting up my own home office because I was going to be self-employed, or like that would be a very different journey. This is slightly bumpier.
It has been quite sudden, hasn't it? And I think maybe that's a factor that normal home working wouldn't encounter quite so much, perhaps. And I think, though, you say you've got a working office upstairs where Fox works, that is quite a workshop, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's his workshop.
So I'm quite lucky that Tom's office is an office, and he's sort of so used to the working from home kind of daily working hours because he does call-ins and stuff.
Yeah.
And I suppose Fox, though he does work from home in the same way, he keeps to his own schedule, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's his own company rather than a company with other people.
Yes, exactly. So he's completely self-employed, which is a really different kind of dynamic from what this is. And I think he's very amused by watching me struggle with this because he's like, can't you just tell people to not have morning meetings? No, that's not really how it works. I mean, I can tell people to F off, but I don't think they'll appreciate that for very long.
No, it's quite early days to start like that, isn't it?
Yeah, early days. But yeah, so it's been an interesting mix because the first day I was so productive. I was having the best time. It was like,
well done.
It was very weird because I made like a neat little list. I had no interruptions. It was glorious. And then gradually it just kind of became worse. After that, where I started getting distracted by things, or social anxiety crept in some way, or like little things just niggle away. So these are things that in like the coming weeks I'm just gonna like try to improve on. So it's gonna be like a gradual thing. And I think the important thing about a situation like this where you're having to work from home without really any preparation is that you are allowed to not be peak performance day one, and you are allowed to change things and basically figure out what works for you. Like, I think that's the only homework that matters right now, is figuring out what works for you, and that it's completely okay to not be okay, and it's completely okay to have days when you're like, actually, you know what, that did not work at all. Let's not do that again tomorrow. We're going to do this differently. And like, you're kind of problem solving yourself, and conservators are great problem solvers.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot as well recently. Obviously, the internet is a very varied place, and you get some people who say, use this lockdown as an opportunity, blah, blah, blah. If you learn languages, do all these amazing things. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, you really don't have to.
Even in a normal working from home situation, it's a process of development, isn't it? It's especially for conservators, because this is not how we normally work. There may well be freelancers who are sitting there going, I'm fine, thank you very much. I've been working from home for ages.
I will say that I have actually talked to some of you who are like, why are people being such pussies about this? And I completely understand you as well. I also fully realize that this entire working from home situation is a real challenge for people who are extroverts, for example. And I think this is a thing that Christina usually reminds us of. Hi, Christina.
Hi,
is
Christina.
That not all conservators are introverts, just because that's kind of the stereotype. And yeah, that's also a very good point, that there are plenty of extroverts amongst us who, like really thrive on the social engagement that they get at work. And the fact that they can't get that now in the same way is a really hard time. So it's a differently hard time for everyone. But I am immensely glad that we're all trying to make the best of it as well. There's been a great amount of sharing online, for example, which I really, really enjoy.
So what is it that you're working on day to day? Because I think that's something that I've been struggling to kind of conceptualize in myself. Like, I know what Tom does fancy things on computers with code and things, and as I've never had a desk job, I don't actually have any concept of what one could do day to day. So what is it that you're working on at the moment?
Okay, well, I mean, interesting and good point. And this is also a question that I've had from people I normally work with or alongside, I should probably say. So basically on the day that we kind of closed up the museum and I put everything to bed, people were like, what on earth are you going to do now? And I was like, well, I actually have plenty to do. And the things that I do now is yay paperwork. And I say yay paperwork with actually a genuine feeling of joy, because I feel like paperwork is something that I neglect, not on purpose, but because there's always something going on and there's never enough time built in to anything for me to finish my documentation properly or tidy the database. We got a new database recently, and
oh my god,
the fact that we've imported all of the conservation records and actually just object records from an old system that was hobbled together and used over 20 years by so many people means that the data is not tidy and it's kind of terrible to work with in the new system. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to tidy that up and make it more usable. So before you couldn't search for red objects because there was no way of telling the database that an object was red. As we're now, you can actually do that, but you do need to supply the data for that. So sometimes it might be that someone's mentioned that an object is red in a different bit of the database, for example. So now you can just put that into the correct field so that that is searchable, for example. So what that means for the conservation side is there's actually like a conservation database. So that has things like what kind of condition things are in, or what kind of treatments things that are suggested for things and all that stuff. But it means that I've got like 20 years of people's attempts to identify problems or treatment methods or conditions. So there's a very entertaining array of range of things that people have said about objects, and sometimes it's like fair but broken or fair but fallen off, and it's like really, I think
how is that what
it's so there's like a lot of that stuff going on where I can finally get my head down and like work that out, because kind of in 10 years time I don't want someone to come and go, this is an unusable mess, now is my time. So I'm doing loads of paperwork of that nature, and also typing up old records that have been handwritten by volunteers and that never got put onto the database, for example, because they were helping me clean something or they were helping a previous conservator clean something. And because volunteers in our organization don't have computer access because we can't give them that because of various risk assessments and stuff, that means that stuff remains on paper, and that's no good when you're trying to look for something. So it's all that kind of stuff where it's basically loads of data entry, tidying up data, writing reports. I'm really looking forward to writing my annual environmental monitoring report and telling people about all the things.
Geek.
I know, all the things that we should improve, and the IPM reports and like all that stuff where it's just like things that I need to sit down and dedicate some time to, but that's usually really hard to do when there's things that are deemed to be more important, like the next exhibition coming up, that loan going back, or that conservation that a client needs doing. So all of those things always trump doing the paperwork, and now is the time to do the other bits, and I'm kind of thrilled by that, although I find that people think that it's a bit like, oh, that's busy work. So I feel like now is the time to kind of communicate to people that these are actually really important bits of your job as well. Just because they don't normally get done doesn't mean that that's the way it should be. Like, it shouldn't take a pandemic for me to have to do my paperwork. The world shouldn't have to stop in its tracks.
International global crisis.
Yes. That shouldn't be what it takes for me to be able to do my paperwork. It's a time to kind of reflect on priorities and all that stuff. But also it's a time to say, it's okay to do these bits. They are actually an important part of my job. And yeah, it's not the shiniest bit of my job, but it's something that is worth doing. And we all know the documentation is an absolute lifesaver, because we all lament when nobody's written anything down about what they used on that thing 3 years ago when there was a different staff member. We all do that. So now is the time to make sure that no one says that about you.
Yeah, exactly. No one wants to be the name on the database that people look at and at the bottom of a report and go, oh, is this person again?
Exactly, right? So I'm kind of relishing doing that bit. And I think that will easily have me entertained for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
Oh, perfect. That's fine then.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled. And I think people worry unnecessarily that I will get bored. And it's just like, no, I'm such a nerd. This is going to be great. Good luck prying me away from it at the end. So yeah, I'm kind of happy about that. I'm also drinking an insane amount of coffee because I have a coffee maker at home.
Yeah, I didn't realise how much tea I would drink if I had any excuse to drink. Oh, I fancy stretching my legs. I'll have a cup of tea.
How many cups of coffee have you had today? Cups. It's more like pints. But yeah, no, so I'm actually quite happy with the tasks I've got. It's just I need to figure out a better way of doing them or like getting in the right headspace. So I've kind of been trying to look into like work from home tips and stuff like that. Been reading a lot of these like kind of articles about like getting set up at home and that sort of thing, just to kind of get a feel for what people are recommending. I am enjoying that. Pretty much every article I come across starts with the words "get dressed." And I mean, I'm a great fan of being in my pajamas, but I have to say, I've taken this opportunity to work from home in a completely different direction. And by that I mean, like, I am in my dressing gown probably longer than I normally would be. However, after that, I glam it
Do you? Oh, that's good.
I wear the dresses and the skirts that I can't wear to work because I'll always be unexpectedly up a ladder or some shit like that. And at this point, that's not happening. So I am using all the leggings and tights and stockings and dresses and skirts, and I'm having the best life.
Oh, that's so good.
All the shoes I cannot wear for work, they're coming out now. It's great. So
I'm so jealous. I'm in tracky bottoms all the time.
I mean, that's fine. I am today.
And like several pairs of thick socks.
I am today. Today I am pretty much like Braless McGee. And today I'm slumming it a bit. But today is a Sunday, so I'm kind of okay with that. But on the work days, I'm like, yeah, get.
That's genius.
I'm a really big fan of Dress Up Friday, I think.
It's Dress Up Friday, yeah.
Yeah, I've been enjoying that. I will be joining in. I just took this as an excuse to just kind of do things that I can't otherwise do, like have nail varnish on.
I've got fancy nails as well. Yeah. I think maybe that's something that's quite common for conservators.
Yeah, I have seen loads of conservators post pictures of themselves going, I'm not working with chemicals, and it's like, yep, I feel you. Yeah, so get dressed is like high on the list, and it's like, okay, tick. Take frequent breaks, tick. Mine are all about making coffee or getting some sensation back in my buttocks because I'm sitting on all of these wooden stools that are like not made for comfort or back support. Like ergonomically, this is a disaster. Another one is dedicate some space or pack away your things at the end of the day. That's one that I need to work on, but we've already established that, and I think it is a good idea. Tracking your time is another good one. And we've talked about this before, but using Toggle is my absolute go-to thing because that's what I use anyway when I'm at work. Have regular check-ins with people. I think that's a good one as well. So that's what we're trying to do with online meetings, which I hate. But you can do them in other ways. And with my line manager, we sometimes just do like a little WhatsApp call or even just like a couple of messages just to go, how are you doing? That sort of thing. You know, as long as you can keep in touch with the people you work with, that's a good one. Also, make sure that you do talk to people. So even if it's not your preferred method, it would be a good idea to just ring someone. It can be a friend. It doesn't have to be a colleague, but just like make sure that you are getting some human contact. I mean, maybe you have a family of 11 and you don't really don't need to talk to anyone else. I don't know your situation, but you know, take care of yourselves.
I've been doing video chats with my manager, and it's always really good because we chat about things we normally do, and things occur to you whilst you're having conversations that might not occur to you whilst you're writing an email, for example.
Exactly.
But they nearly always start with they usually go, hi, oh god, my hair, how are you doing?
You could try having some like music for like concentrating more, focusing more. You're not going to annoy anyone else unless you're massively annoying your housemates. Then, you can have headphones as well. So if music helps you concentrate, that could be a great thing to do now because it's probably not going to bother anyone else. Yeah,
I've been sitting with Tom upstairs, and luckily we have very similar tastes in music, so blaring out some Nils Fram and nice calming zone type music.
That sounds very good. Something that I've noticed come up on a lot of these lists is meal prep, just to keep like food intake regular and minimum hassle. I don't know how do you feel about that? Do you prefer to like kind of go and cook something, like just like it's lunch now, I will cook something from scratch, or is it more of a I like to have something prepared so it's nice and easy and quick? Or
I'm not a big fan of cooking at the best of times, I have to be honest. So I would rather have like a bread-based lunch or a leftovers-based lunch.
But yeah, so I think those are the kinds of like recommendations I've been seeing in a kind of a general sense.
They're great general advice. Yeah, really, really good. I've seen on the ICON website, ICON Institute for Conservation, UK professional body, Perrette Squires has written 15 ideas for conservators at home, which is so lovely because it's really, really specific. For example, number 1 is write up projects as articles for publication and abstracts for conference presentations to submit in the future, which is actually one of the things that I had on my list for something that testing that I haven't been able to physically do, but I've sort of done most of the precursor of the project, so the setup and the testing, design and stuff like that. So that's something that I was going to do. She's also said learn a new craft, for example needle felting, because you can use that in conservation for taxidermy areas, for example. That's another great idea. I was thinking of doing, like, before I realised I had nothing that I wanted to waste by breaking it and no specific adhesives. I was going to like break a glass and repair it because I've not really done much glass and ceramics, for example. Let's carry on. Make videos and write blogs, make podcasts. Who does that?
Tick.
This is a good one. Number 7, review and update policies, cost and risk assessments in line with current legislation.
Because we do them every 2 years and they're coming up this summer, so it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And stuff changes all the time. Practices change all the time. Staff members change all the time and stuff. What else have we got here? Create and update CPD records. CPD is something I'd really like to talk about in a minute, actually. I love number 14 as well. Conserve your home.
Aww.
Mend those things at home that you never got round to. And I think I like this list, not just because it's very specific, but also because it's quite sensitive to CPD, and it's quite kind of sensitive to the fact that we are really practical people, and that it might not actually be that we can do a lot of our day-to-day life at home because we don't have access to it, but that doesn't mean that we can't be practical. It doesn't mean we can't learn stuff and take stuff from this situation. So thanks, Perrette.
Yeah, thank you.
So, though I am on furlough leave at the moment, something that was on my list to do either in work time or not was focus on some CPD, and that is basically because I realised that I've been graduated now for 7 years, Jesus, and it's been quite a long time since I really did some proper formalised learning. And I know that sounds dreadful because we're always encouraged to keep abreast with the conservation community, read articles, which I do, go to conferences, which I do the research that you need to do for your day-to-day life, for example, which I do, but day-to-day conservation life, I should say. Obviously, you're not like reading about your washing machine or the plants that you're planting. But I realised that I've not though I've bought books for things that I do need to learn about, I'll use the example of modern printing methods. My job does have a lot of modern printed like leaflets and posters and stuff like that. So knowing about like surface coatings and printing methods and all of that is really important. But I've not had a project that requires me to do that research specifically. So I've just not ever got round to it. So basically, when I came home with all the stuff I needed to work on, I've just brought home loads of those books as well. So I intend to do myself like information sheets, posters and stuff like that, do that research. I want to revise the plastics training that I did a year ago, because some people retain information, but for me, information just kind of leaks out my ears, it feels like.
You need to kind of use it, and
I need to use it, and it needs to be something that I kind of constantly revise. And I'm dyslexic as well, so the kind of research and reading, though it's been on my list to, we've even said, let's have research days and stuff. It's just so difficult for me to get round to, because it just takes quite a lot out of me to do it. So yeah, that kind of thing. And again, as Perrette suggested, writing articles or abstracts of things that you've been working on, or projects that you always thought that would be great to write up. Yeah, doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it is a really good time for CPD like that. So it's, that is good.
Ooh, and I just wrote an article from the C Word for the News and Conservation magazine. And that was an article of the portfolios episode that we did a couple of seasons ago, and that really got me thinking about my portfolio. And even though I'm not actually applying to jobs or anything, I'm going to work on my portfolio as well and have that as a good summary of the things that I've done. So that's another thing I'll be working on. So I've been thinking about social media because so much of what we do, though it's very practical, is also about engagement and engaging with the community and advocacy in conservation. So people have been sharing what they've been doing in the past, and obviously I've found, what do you share if you're not in the lab? You can't take a photo of your desk every day and say, I'm working at my desk again. But people have been looking through like the back photos of what they've been working on for the past few years and sharing that, which has been really great. I've been really enjoying Museum and Heritage Workers, which is IMWD 2030 on Instagram, with a hashtag Museum from Home. And they've been really good with like little videos of conservators doing their thing, and you've probably seen curators recreating their favourite paintings, which I've really enjoyed as well. That's been really, really nice to see. I'm going to do a Frida Kahlo one at some point, but amazing. I want to involve a cat, and I don't know that she'll agree with me. We'll see.
I look forward to it.
Twitter as well has been really great. And I just wanted to do a little shout out to Dr. Mariana. Oh God, I'm gonna garble your name here, and I'm really sorry. Dr. Mariana Di Giacomo?
Okay.
Giacomo. She's done a day by day of working from home post on Twitter relating to all aspects of conservation. And she started, the first one I saw was day 3, which is about cosmetic sponges and the things that you can use. Yeah, I shared it with you because we use them in my studio, and I know other people do, but I've not seen someone kind of publicly celebrating them so well, and that was really, really good. Even if it wasn't for the lockdown, it would be a great way of communicating what we do.
Absolutely.
And so I'll just give another couple of examples. Day 13 was about water and its role in deterioration. And day 11 described the agent of deterioration disassociation with the problem that we have of Tupperware without a lid. How annoying fantastic. It is during the day. And I just wanted to highlight that one as a really, actually genuinely good learning tool.
That is some great science communication. That is fantastic.
Yeah, I really liked it. And of course, Twitter is free. It's accessible to everyone. You can engage with it. You can contact them, blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of people doing stuff like that at the moment. And I know it passes the time for them as well, but it's quite nice to see a sort of focus of learning information. And I think we've said before on the podcast that we can be a bit shy to share our knowledge and share our work, and we're a bit worried about people disagreeing with us or judging us or that kind of thing. But I think this opportunity, when everyone's in the same boat, everyone's working from home, people have really sort of kind of stepped out of their shells a little bit.
Yeah, opened up a bit. It's been really nice. Yeah, that's a really good point. Speaking of opening up, we did ask people who teach conservation degrees to kind of share with us some of their perspectives in these times when basically the kind of practical side of the conservation degrees are kind of suspended, essentially. So we kind of put a call out for if anyone kind of wanted to talk about their situation and how they're feeling that this is going to impact the students and what they're doing to mitigate it and all of that stuff. So we've got a couple of those clips now.
My name is Abby Bainbridge, and I'm an associate lecturer in the book conservation department at Westdean. And the short answer is we don't really have an answer yet about what's going to change with the program and how. We've decided to suspend in-person teaching for the rest of the academic year, which means doing whatever teaching will be left online, but we haven't figured out how to adjust our program to fit that. It's obviously completely possible to do lectures, demonstrations, discussions remotely, tutorials, but the big problem for all the programs is going to be how to deliver the practical work components and what work to still require. And I'm also struggling with the idea of even keeping the written work to the same deadlines, some of which are coming up soon, because everyone's distracted. The students are distracted as much as not being able to be in their normal workspaces and have access to the normal resources that they have. So Westdean is talking to the University of Sussex, who validates our programs, because any changes we need to make will have to be approved by them. And luckily we have a month-long spring break coming up, and we had done all of our practical work assessments just before everything got shut down. So in a way, we have a bit of time to figure things out while people would have some downtime anyway. In terms of support for the students, our students are a bit spread out now. A lot of them have gone home. Many are international. There are some still left at college, I think around 10. And they're all isolating basically as a family unit together. But yeah, now everyone's spread out in different time zones even. What we've done so far is set up a weekly video chat just to kind of check in on everyone and get together as a group. Not for anything academic yet, just kind of moral support, which I think the tutors need just as much as the students. I think we all really miss the normalcy of being together. It's a pretty close-knit community just because of the number of students and how much time they spend together. Yeah, we've decided to basically, this all happened in the last couple of weeks of term, but we had done our assessments already. So we do tutorials with the students after assessments just to talk through the grades, and we've done that by video chat. But otherwise, we're kind of dropping the academic work for now and just providing kind of optional feedback, support, resources online for the people who do want to engage. But I think a lot of people are feeling pretty overwhelmed and not able to take in new information right now after the spring break that was going to happen anyway. So end of April is when everyone comes back, usually. We would switch to whatever kind of distance learning we figure out between now and then. In a way, I think it's better that this happened at the end of the academic year because it means they've had as much time as possible in the studio and with us and in their classes. So they're the most able to work independently. But it's also the term that we really emphasize more independent practical work. So the graduates, the first year students, would be kind of moving towards working more independently. So rather than everyone trying this technique together or that technique together, it's more getting an object and figuring out what they think it needs and then executing that and just getting that practice. For the second year students who are almost finished, the MA students, they will be ramping up their MA research. So, the academic part of that can continue, but a lot of those students will be doing scientific research or surveys or other things that require access to collections or equipment that just won't be possible now, or at least not right now. And then they're kind of taking on much more complicated projects for their portfolios, things that would take longer or involve things we haven't necessarily taught in the program that they start figuring out for themselves and really building that confidence to leave and apply for the next thing, an internship or a job. So it's hard to figure out the best way to give them those experiences at home.
Hello, C-Word listeners. So the lovely team at the C-Word asked me to talk about what we're doing for conservation teaching at Cardiff University. And the first thing I'd like to say is this is all so very new and so very in progress that these are just initial thoughts, coping strategies and first responses. I don't think any of us have all the answers. I know I certainly don't have all the answers. And so, I hope that people understand that this is not maybe the best thought through teaching strategy. Everything I've ever seen about online teaching and the move to online teaching, suggests that we probably need about 3 years to do it properly. So to be doing it in a couple of days is, is a difficult thing. So how are we tackling the teaching during the lockdown? Well, We had some virtual learning platforms at the university, like Panopto. That's where they record lectures, so we can use that. And we've all had to learn how to use something called Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. I always think that the Ultra is that little bit extra. But anyway, this is where you can do a class with everyone online. We've done a few of those. I think that they're quite nice. The main problem I think we find with those is that the people with, difficult Wi-Fi find it hardest to join in, and we've had to do quite a lot of adaptations in terms of making sure that we're talking on the notes bar and things like that. I think as we've gone on, we've all got a little bit better at doing it. I know in my Care of Collections class, I celebrate whenever I manage to use a virtual whiteboard or a quiz thing. And I suppose my first feelings about those things are that there are some opportunities there that we didn't used to have, which are quite nice. Certainly for the collections care, we've been sharing videos. We had an incredible class, which was meant to be a light survey of the National Museum of Wales. Luckily, some of the students had done the prerequisite pre-planning light tour, and then one of the students was an absolute whiz at finding images of the galleries that we were supposedly walking through, and we kind of mentally walked through. So it was okay, it's not what we want. It's not what we want to be doing. In terms of exams, we don't have too many exams. Mostly we've moved away from that. So that's not been too big of a thing. Cardiff University has quite a complicated strategy. And one of my big challenges in this lockdown was I, unfortunately, bad timing, took a job of organising teaching and learning in the whole of my school. So I've had a big task helping us to reorganise that. I won't go on about it too much, but it has kept me awake at night. But for conservation, it's not been too big of an issue. We're mostly going to put some little bit more time into assessments. And the one thing I've got to really do is look at the practical projects, modules, assessment guides. And that's something I'm hoping to do in the next few days and give some more support. We have tried to, we're making adjustments that are just like being human, like, if people have got a rubbish photo, maybe they took it on their phone and they were planning to take a decent photo later, that they're just going to put whatever photo they've got in. We are sourcing images if anyone has anything. We're desperately helping each other find literature. So if someone can't find something, if someone knows a place where it can be found, we're doing as much of that as we can. That sort of thing is, going okay, because we've kind of got a collaborative culture. I'm sure all conservation courses do, don't they? A collaborative culture. We had a conservation library and the lab library, and we've done a lot of work around that. Really, I don't want to start naming all the students because they've all done an amazing job, and then that'll be bad if I miss one person. And also everyone who knows me knows how bad I am at names. But our librarians have done an incredible job in getting us ready in terms of knowing what resources we had. So the practical thing is the biggest problem, isn't it? Because you can't get in. I don't know about other courses, but certainly at Cardiff University, many of the staff were on strike in the immediate run-up to COVID, although we didn't realise then at the time that's what it was. So we've had an incredibly disrupted term. The students have done an incredible amount of work. They've made progress wherever there was a break in the strike. Staff had crossovers with people and people have made progress. I can't say it's what I would like because it isn't. I mean, nobody would want a situation that we're in now, but we're in that situation. So what we've done to go forward with that is that we were in the phase towards the end of term. We're, I think, at week 9. So we had 2 more teaching weeks. And so we've lost 2. So we're kind of halfway through the second term. So all of the students have had all of their objects allocated for the whole of last term and half of this term. And most of them, I think all of them have made incredible progress, making decisions. We tried before the strike to sign off as many treatment proposals. So people did as much as they could. And what we are going to look to do for assessment is problematize, to talk through what people would have done, what strategies, their decision making, and that sort of thing. So for the first teaching session that we did online after the crisis, the lockdown, we did really focus on that decision-making process so that people could think about how to express, because they're talking in abstract about what they would have done instead of talking about what they actually did. It's an incredibly difficult time, isn't it? So one of the things we've been doing is just trying to have classes in the same times as the classes were, just to have that structure, just to be together when we'd expect to be together. We've tried to make the classes quite challenging because I don't know about anybody else. I think sometimes it's nice to have a break and not think about some of the bigger problems in the world. We have a wonderful alumni have clubbed together and have set up a virtual mentoring scheme that has been led by Charlotte Lester, who has already set up a group of mentors and mentees, and we're hoping that they can twin together to do that. We're busy planning for the post-Easter classes. We're going to look at tools, techniques and conservation, chemicals and potions, lotions and that sort of thing for the first 3. And we are sourcing any kind of video, any kind of interactive material that we can then talk around virtually. And, no, it's not a great replacement, but it's what we can do. One of the things that we did quite early on is we got what's called the program learning outcomes. So in order to deliver a degree, you have to commit to teaching various things, and these are often called the learning outcomes, and the program learning outcomes are the ones for the whole degree as opposed to maybe the module ones. So we did very quickly look at those and have a real think about how we might deliver those in different ways. And that's been that's been the structure, I guess, by which we've put together the alternative teaching. What kind of support has been available for the staff? Well, we've got each other. We might be doing the odd quiz night. I think it's incredibly difficult. I don't think we're very tactile people, aren't we, conservators? We like our spaces, we like our labs, we like our objects, and I think we all miss it very, very much. We miss teaching. It's just funny. It's just the daily things. You sort of see things on the telly and you think, oh, I could have done that if I could have gone to the lab, or I could have made those things up, but I've got some thread at the lab, or, but I could read this book, but it's in the office. So I think we all miss each other. The university has sent us lots of emails about well-being. I haven't had time to read them, but I've certainly had lots. And today is a day where we've been, given a day off from email, which is why I've had time to record this, which is lovely to speak to you, albeit virtually. I hope that this is enough of a rush through. Oh yeah, the one other thing I wanted to mention was, and another thanks really, is that after the strike, we only had 2 days before the lockdown. And the first day, we didn't realise we were going to be locked out at that point. So everyone talked about their objects, their practical work. But on the second day, we knew we were going to be locked out. And so many of the students came in, and they helped make the lab safe for closed down, made sure all the objects were put away safely, any treatments were suspended in a safe way, all the objects were packed, the benches were cleared. And, it's just such a testament to the conservation community. I know that some of the students are worried that they'll be less employable, but honestly, if you can get through a degree in this climate, this year's graduates will be some of the most adaptable, some of the most resilient and most employable people that you can imagine. And I really hope that that's recognised in the job market as this lot graduate through. So really, that's all I've got to say. I'm looking forward to listening to the C word, because we all need to hear a happy voice from time to time.
Well, thanks so much for sharing with us, guys. That was really great. Thank you.
Really, really interesting to listen to.
I have to say, there are some really good points in there about that. Loads of the learning, like the more formal kind of classroom learning that can be done as a kind of a long distance thing. And I'm sure that there will be people will really rally to make this work. And I'd be really curious to hear how the students might be sharing resources and kind of coming together. I love the idea of regular WhatsApp calls and people just kind of having almost online study groups and stuff like that to kind of get through this. I really like that idea.
Yeah, I think it's really, an aspect of it that is nice is the fact that everyone is in the same boat. All the universities are in the same boat doing all the different types of projects. And there are going to be people out there who were in the middle of an experiment and now it's all a mess and it's a huge disaster. But because everyone understands, funding is being extended, like JSTOR, for example, access to publications is being made more public, more accessible to students, which is really good. And people are thinking so much about digital elements and things that we can do, and this has definitely made me think about videoing myself working a bit more and having that as something that I can share to people who have questions if they have questions in the future.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of great opportunity for kind of conservators everywhere to kind of contribute video material, and because most of us will have a smartphone or something that we can actually do a brief clip on. It doesn't have to be a YouTube documentary. It doesn't have to be
exactly.
ultra professional. Like that's something to save for like another day. Like that's fine. But right now we can get through on like slightly more low quality stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I was listening to our friends over at Career in Ruins, the archaeology podcast, and they were talking about this sort of kind of exact same problem in archaeological degree programs and stuff as well, and how for a long time, basically, people have been saying that, we could do more of this like in a webinar format, or we could record these.
Yeah.
We could record these lectures, and that would be really useful later down the line. But like, better late than never. Now is the time to kind of figure this out if we haven't already. But yeah, so because in archaeology there are similar problems. So like, well, you might not be able to do your field work, for example, or you're not going to be able to go and do that finds processing right now and that sort of thing, right? So it's, it's a similar kind of problem of, right, the practical side is kind of suspended for now. But I guess a thing that I think about is, if your experiment has gone up right now because you can't get to your samples, or you can't monitor something, or whatever it is that you're doing, that is in and of itself an interesting thing to talk about, say in a job interview or something. And
absolutely.
It's a really interesting thing to have as kind of half completed thing in your portfolio to say, well, and then this happened, and really what I had to do was I had to completely rethink this and do this instead. Like that shows problem solving of like a whole different degree.
Definitely.
And it's relatable because it happened to everyone. Like, I don't know a lot of conservators who haven't had to leave something in the lab, like, that was half finished. That's so annoying. I'm not going to be able to get back and get the right dye color again because the dyes have gone off now. There's been like a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of frustration of that kind of nature of like, well, we've all had to kind of leave things in the middle of something. And sometimes that will be absolutely fine. It's easy to pick it back up. Or sometimes it's like, I'm going to have to start completely over again. But, so I think it's a really relatable thing to talk about, that you can kind of bring up as that, well, this experiment was, 3/4 of the way done. And unfortunately that last bit there, I couldn't do. This is what I decided to do instead. Like, actually those things are brilliant conversation starters.
Yeah, don't try and hide it. Don't try and kind of, pretend that everything went fine, definitely. But also try to make the most of what you have achieved, because we know that the experimentation side of things is actually only a very tiny part of the work that's required when you're doing most things, isn't it? And ask advice as well, because there will be people who, will have been prevented from doing something for a different reason. Absolutely. And came out something else.
Students out there, I believe in you. I just do.
Absolutely. And I think I want to say as well that this is a strange kind of time to discuss studying at a distance from home as well, because there will be all sorts of reasons in life that suddenly needing to study at distance becomes a thing. And not all of those will have the emotional burden that we're under at the moment. So, though we can be really positive about the things that you can achieve, and everyone is trying to provide the support that they can, give yourself a break. Stuff's scary right now.
It's completely fine if you're too overwhelmed or just can't right now. Like, my mental health I was an absolute wreck when I was a student. So, like, God only knows how I would have felt under these circumstances. So,
it's tough.
Yeah, you do what you can, and that's absolutely fine. But I think this is definitely something that you can bring up in job interviews in the future, and you can kind of bring them up and like that sort of thing. Because I've seen students, basically Icon has opened a Discord server in the wake of all of this to kind of make people feel a bit more connected. A Discord server is basically like a chat room. It is the way that I think about it. It's like a chat room, and where people can kind of come and exchange ideas and like ask questions and stuff. And like there have been students coming on, for example, expressing that they're really bummed out that they can't do the practical side of this anymore, because like, yeah, it's fine that you can teach me about chemical bonds from home, but like at the same time I can't be there and do these practical things that I needed to get in my portfolio. And like obviously that is a really, really tricky time. It is. But yeah, so that's going to be something we're going to have to try to solve. But at the same time, I think maybe now is the time to do weird stuff like windowsill experiments, and like maybe do other bits that you can do, even if you can't get to your object. Sometimes that can be just research.
If you can.
Yeah, and take care of yourselves, for goodness sake. That's the main thing. Today I fancied some armchair travel, so I picked up a book called Herculaneum and the House of the Bicentenary, History and Heritage. It's a 2020 Getty publication written by archaeologist Sarah Court and conservator Leslie Rayner. Just for a bit of context, Herculaneum was a town in the Bay of Naples that was wiped out in the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. The house of the Bicentenary is one of the most lavish private residences found in the town. Now that we've covered that, on to the review. Now, as someone without much of an inherent interest in the Herculaneum itself, when it comes to Vesuvius engulfed ancient towns, I'm afraid I'm more of a Pompeii girl. I found the introductory chapter a little dry, but I'm glad to say that that's the dusty bits done with, and the rest of the book is an absolute joy to read as an archaeology nerd. I kind of felt like I could stroll down the streets when I read the second chapter, and the immersive writing is accompanied by a visual feast of drawings and photos. It's a stunningly beautiful book all in all. The next chapters deal with Herculaneum post-eruption, how it became a forgotten tragedy, and how it was rediscovered. I really appreciate there's a bit of space in this book dedicated to pop culture references to the town and the disaster at Vesuvius. I just thought it was a nice touch, and it's an excellent excuse to include some really cheesy vintage poster art. With my conservation goggles on, I especially enjoyed reading about the excavation and restoration of the house of the Bicentenary in the 1930s. It's a glimpse into a very different era of heavy, inventive choices, but it's so interesting. Now that I'm slightly tired of saying House of the Bicentenary over and over again, I'd like to read out some of the amazing names of the other buildings in Herculaneum, just for a laugh and possibly for some context. Have a listen to these. House of the Black Salon, House of the Wooden Shrine, House of the Grand Portal, House of the Loom, House of the Carbonized Furniture, House of the Beautiful Courtyard, House of the Gem, House of the Stags, House of the Alcove, House of the Wooden Screen, House of the Inn, and my personal favourite, House of the Skeleton. Now, there are over 50 named locations on this map that I'm looking at, so I'm not going to go through more than that, but actually I suppose the Bicentenary isn't too bad. Okay, back to the review. The mix of great photos and archaeological plans really help the reader get a feel for the place. You can easily imagine walking down the streets and peering into the ruins. I kind of imagine it's a sunny day, just warm enough to let you walk around in a t-shirt, at a socially acceptable distance if Italy wasn't in lockdown, and it's a tad muggy. Inexplicably, the walls of the buildings cling to a little cool, giving the houses a feeling of being air-conditioned despite the gaping holes in the walls and the crumbling plasterwork. You step over the cart tracks worn into the paving slabs as you dart across the street to examine a pretty mosaic on a column. Nice, isn't it? Right, okay, this is a review, sorry. Chapter 6 is a bit like a beautiful real estate listing for the House of the Bicentenary, and this is where we finally get to meet the building. Its architectural quirks, its history, and its rose garden. Chapter 7 is one for the wall painting and or mosaic enthusiasts amongst you. My favourite takeaway from this section was about volcanic heat and colour conversion. Super cool stuff. The conservation porn kicks off in earnest in Chapter 8. Herculaneum is a site that's best described as an archaeological park in an urban landscape or an open-air museum, and this brings a multitude of challenges. This is definitely a read with appeal to those of you who care for structures, monuments and sites, which often includes wall paintings and mosaics, but there are unexpected nuggets in this chapter. Like, how do you deal with completely carbonized wood that must remain in situ, for example? The final chapter ties together the past with the present and the future, and rounds off the book nicely. All in all, this is a book on site management and history, with cameos of conservation work in it. But it's a vivid and deeply interesting read, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, to be honest. It's visual yet rich in content, and I'd recommend it to anyone with even a pinch of interest in Herculaneum or open-air heritage sites for that matter. Hope you enjoyed this whistle-stop tour and book review. This book has 160 pages, full colour illustrations throughout, and costs about £25 on Amazon. As usual, we will pop a link to that in the show notes.
Dear Jane, I'm a conservator for a local organisation. During COVID-19 lockdown, my workload has actually expanded because a lot of staff believe that I'm not benchworking, so are sending me their hobby conservation repair questions of theirs or for a friend by sending photos and asking for some quick and basic rules. I'm always open to advising and sharing knowledge. However, I'm struggling to get staff to understand that conservation is not a quick remedy. How can I draw a clear boundary but still provide a good collaborative relationship with my team members? Dear Hobby Horse, well, thanks for your inquiry. It's a new world and we're asking a whole bunch of new questions. Like you, I'm also far busier than I was before. So perhaps this is the sign that I'm the ultimate pen pusher because I've been doing a lot of that. But back to your question, which is about conservation repair questions. I find this really an interesting question because the worry is that they're saying, well, what glue should I stick it with? And you're going, oh my God, don't use glue, or, don't use that glue because you're going to stick it to your fingers or it'll be reversible. But actually, I think what we're frustrated about when people think that our job is just how to glue something back together is I think what we're frustrated with is the people to understand the bigger picture. So I'm going to give you an example of where I had exactly that kind of inquiry, which is about my mum, who I had to visit recently, unfortunately, because she was unwell. I mean, not it was unfortunate to visit, but unfortunately she was unwell. And she was talking to me about a pair of chairs that her mum had reupholstered, so very important to her. And she has them in the window. And she asked me, how best to conserve them. And they're a beautiful stained wood, and the embroidery is by her mum's. And clearly they shouldn't sit in the window. But instead of saying, move it out the window, I said to my mum, what makes those chairs important to you? And she talked a little bit about the embroidery. But then what she said was, when her friends come to visit, they often pick those chairs because they're the higher ones, and some of her friends can't sit in a sofa. And they're incredibly important in those locations because that's where people want to sit, sort of next to the window and looking across where my mum likes to sit. That, to me, is what we should be doing. Establish the value, do the significance assessment with your friends and colleagues, find out why they're important, because when we talked about that, I explained to my mum that where they sat near the window would lead to them fading, and we talked a little bit about where she could leave the curtain if she didn't want them to fade. But when we talked about moving the chairs, it didn't work because what's important about those chairs is that her friends who can't get onto a lower seat can sit on them and sit comfortably and come to visit. Now, at the moment, obviously, my mum can't have any friends round, but I think, we still like to have those signs and those reminders about us of our connections and our friends and our place in the world. So I hope that that kind of story might give you some inspiration for your projects. If we want to get people to understand that conservation is not a quick remedy, instead of getting drawn straight into their question of what glue or what lux or whatever, ask them the questions that we would ask of any object. What is this? Why is it important? What do we want to do with it? How have people enjoyed it in the past? How might people enjoy it in the future? Where's the use? Where's the value? And we all have learned that value is not about money, that value is about meaning and friendship and families and connections and knowledge and sharing, and sometimes about peace and quiet and getting away. That's probably the thing we'll be valuing the most. But those are the questions that I think that make conservation way more than being a technician. So I hope that you can use them to be a good collaborative member with your teams. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with giving people advice on how to clean their own things. If you can help them clean them more carefully, then that's great. Stop people from pouring nail varnish remover onto half of the world and stop people from using strong glue when they shouldn't be. That's okay too. People's things, they are allowed to fix them any which way they like. And if we can help them do better, then that's great. Maybe show them how to make a sand tray if it's a broken ceramic. Many people will be sitting in the house with very little to do. Obviously, neither of us, but they might welcome the kind of quiet patience that conservation takes. So I don't know if that's a help, Hobby Horse. Who knows what helps at the moment. But it was really nice to speak to you virtually through the C Word podcast, and I'm hoping that the C Word is at least a help to us all. Over and out.
If you're enjoying the C Word and would like to support our work, then please consider becoming one of our patrons. For as little as $1 per month, you can help us keep our episodes online and more of them coming. Patreon helps us meet our regular costs for the show, and also to plan ahead so we know roughly how much of a monthly budget we've got. That's super helpful when you're trying to do something special like buy a better microphone or save up to go to a special event. Your support also helps keep us free of advertisement. In return, our supporters get access to our archive of extended episodes, which you can only access on our Patreon page. Yeah, for that $1 a month, you get a little extra audio enjoyment. We've crunched the numbers, and it's about 10% extra content on a regular basis. Well, that's not bad for less than a cup of coffee, eh? If supporting us sounds like something you'd like to do, then head over to patreon.com/thecword and join our bunch of absolute champions. Thanks for listening. We're the C Word, and you've been listening to Kloe Rumsey and me, Gina Mathiasson. Join us next time for an episode about integrated pest management. In the meantime, check out our website at theseawood.show, tweet us at theseawoodpodcast, or simply email us on theseawoodpodcast@gmail.com. Intro and outro music is Spring by Didi Music, used under Creative Commons Attribution License. Additional music and sound effects by Callum Robertson. Artwork by Jenny Mathiasson. This has been a Wooden Dice production.
Initially, I was researching this. I'll try again.